Hi there, and welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Bird, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. And Roger, if you're wondering what this background is, I'm in the bowels of Royal Montreal's locker room, hosting the President's Cup this week, starting, of course, on Thursday through Sunday. As the internationals, which have had next to zero success in the President's Cup. Yet when we look at the junior game and the college game, we're seeing incredible amounts of success from the quote unquote international side. How long, how long before we start to see that translate and we start to get a little bit, I'm just asking for a little bit of parity, Roger, in the President's Cup?
Wow. I don't know, Ryan. That's a tough one because it doesn't look good for that international team, unfortunately. But it is interesting that we do have so much success at the junior level, and that's not necessarily translating. Or maybe it is. I mean, there is a lot in the women's game that's translating quite nicely. But in the men's game, it's definitely dominated by the U.S. team in the President's Cup. Ryder Cup seems to have a little bit more parity there. So it is a little interesting with the President's Cup, given the international team flavor, where they're coming from, how they're gelling or not gelling as a team. So I think that has a lot more to do with it than anything. It's like this, it is a team, the President's Cup team and the Ryder Cup team, U.S. Ryder Cup team, typically are the same guys. Internationally, the Ryder Cup, those guys are the European team, right? And the President's Cup just being split amongst all the others, right? That never really get to play together, travel together, like the European team. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. I don't know if it's the junior game not translating because, boy, we got a lot of great, junior athletes that are coming through the U.S. playing in the colleges today and making a professional debut.
And I think you could make the argument that it's just a matter of time catching up before we do see that translation. I'm going to give you a crazy statistics here, Roger. There's actually more returning players for the internationals from the last President's Cup to this President's Cup than the United States team.
Oh, that's interesting.
Never happened before.
Yeah, that's interesting. This might be a little scary then for the U.S.
Well, I mean, there was such a mainstay of guys from the live effect, certainly with a Dustin Johnson or Brooks Koepka. They've been on a million teams. They're gone. Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth not playing well. They're gone. And, you have seen a little bit of a turnover for the U.S. side comparatively. The internationals, which is an easier team to make, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And the international base is extremely young. With your Tom Kims of the world, some of your younger players that I think you might start to see a little bit of a I think you're going to see, put it this way too. I think Canada, due to their national program, we talk a lot about national programs on this podcast because the United States has been extremely late to the national game party. Canada might be the most successful national team as far as what that's meant for their country.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, the statistics show that the Canada per capita is the most successful golf, federation, if you will, right? I mean, they've produced more professional golfers than anyone else per capita, which is interesting given the fact that you are freezing there in Canada right now already. Where at least it's 60 degrees here in Connecticut.
Well, certainly that is something that we will ask our guest coming up on the program, Emily Marron, the head coach at UCF. Moving on to the Big 12. Wow, has the story for UCF changed in some of this conference realignment? You look at kind of a huge school in the middle of Florida, a hotbed of golf, but kind of stuck in conference purgatory. Not anymore. You're now in with Oklahoma State. How about that? You're in with, some of the real blue bloods of college golf. So I would not expect UCF to. I wouldn't be surprised if UCS men and women become a perennial team that vies for match play at the NCAA's.
Oh, for sure. I mean, look at they played well last week in Annika's event in Minnesota. I mean, you had the who's who of college, Division One college women's golf last week there. They held their own quite nicely. I mean, listen, they've like many teams have gotten an international flavor on their roster. These girls, women are coming from everywhere playing great golf. So it should be interesting for them. I mean, listen, they should be, where they are. I mean, I think they are currently a top 30 team, which is they've perennially been in the top, 25. So, maybe this year is a little rebuild. Who knows? But
in your opinion, does conference matter the least in college golf compared to every other sport there is?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the big thing is that you're in the right conference to get the automatic bid, right? I mean, and I think that is the coveted thing. And you get a conference like the Big 12 or any of the Power Four conferences now, it's going to be a struggle to get into the big tournament, the big dance, if you will, because you're going to get beat up by your own competition. And that's a tough one. Now, that also goes well to, okay, who also ran, when the top good players or good teams are coming out, they're going to get it, at least an invite, right? Because they are the top team. So I think that does help them in that regards. But, maybe the lesser conferences, it definitely speaks more volume to those getting that automatic bid in their conferences, and where they are in the country matters. I know here in the Northeast, you hear the coaches all the time, really, I don't want to say complaining, but just wish they were in a different conference so they had a better chance of getting an automatic bid.
Right. So let's do as we wait for Coach to jump on. Let's take two Northeastern schools. One, Boston College in a Power Four, UConn in the Big East, which obviously isn't really anything of a golf conference. Then you take a UNLV and a New Mexico outside the Power Four, but certainly golf kind of hotbeds. Certainly more players are coming out of UNLV than probably 80% of Power Four conferences as far as, I mean, sure, you have your Alabamas, your Georgias, but, you go down to the depths of the SEC, the bottom of the SEC, the bottom of the ACC, the bottom of the Big Ten. I mean, when, Penn State certainly has had some, Rutgers has had some, Iowa has had some, Michigan State, Michigan. I mean, you have your Illinois and Ohio State. Now, of course, adding UCLA, USC, and Oregon is going to change the Big Ten in the way their golf is situated. But I guess what I was getting at is I almost feel like weather and facilities in golf, just because you only play your conference in the conference tournament. And to your point, you're dead on. That automatic bid is gigantic. But, college basketball and football, you're essentially only playing your conference. The entire year is based around playing who's in your conference. In golf, those teams may only see each other one time the entire year. Actually, it's pretty likely just on base because of how teams set their schedule.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and coaches now, and they know their responsibility to the players that they're recruiting in, which is they want to make sure that they give them the best exposure possible, give them the best chances to play tournaments that's going to groom them for that next level. So I do think that that's a big part of it, right? I mean, again, going back to the Northeast schools where they're having to travel, to the Midwest just to be in a conference, to get be, eligible for an automatic bid, if you will, right? So coaches are aware that they want to make sure that their players are playing some of the best events to get that next level experience.
And let's bring in the aforementioned Emily Marron, the head coach at the UCF. Coach, we were just talking about it in the Big 12. It's like, hello, welcome to big time conference golf, the impact. I'm curious for you. UCF has always been a giant school as far as population, in a great spot in Orlando. How has the transition to the Big 12 affected your team in your mind?
Well, I didn't get football tickets for the game on Saturday versus Colorado. That's
Oh no.
so yeah, I've been here 12 years, and it's safe to say that it's almost a whole different place. From athletically to on campus, people now know who UCF is, but being affiliated with a conference like the Big 12, that almost every day we get up and conferences are changing and we add new schools, but it's exciting. I think I've been coaching, this is my 25th year of coaching women's college golf, and it's growing and getting bigger and better. And I mean, for us being in the Big 12, I think women's golf, it's one of the stronger conferences. We're right up there with the SEC. So, I tell recruits, look, like, it's all about football, right? So being affiliated with a conference like that, yes, it's all about football, and we feel those trickle down effects. So I always tell the girls, we want that football team to do really well because, I played at Penn State. So I know how important a solid football team is to the success of everybody there. So it's fun. And, Fox is here this week to do like their college game day on campus. So it's just a level of excitement, enthusiasm, and I think it's good for all of us.
Well, Coach, with that being said, and by the way, welcome and thanks for being on the show. But with that being said, you want the college football team to do well. Is that because we know many reasons, but more financially, is it a financial thing that I know reading your bio, having to go out and raise money and do summer camps and things like that for your team to have experiences, if you will, as we were just talking about traveling to different locations and playing better events. Is that a big part of why you want to see that success in the football program?
Yeah, of course. I mean, money makes the world go round, right? So, I mean, I think as Olympic sports, as we coin ourselves, we're used to fundraising, and the bigger sports like football and basketball with their success makes that a little bit easier. We're I don't know if it's an exciting time, but an interesting time with NIL. And, I feel for our fundraising arms that they have to raise money not only for facilities, but now we have to raise money to pay athletes. So, our donors get pulled in a lot of ways now. And we just redid a tee box at our facility. I'm chipping away at it little by little. I'm so fortunate here in Orlando to have great partnerships with a Lake Nona. We were at Bay Hill this morning. So, it takes a lot of people in the golf community to support a program. And we're fortunate here in Orlando to have a lot of great people behind
Coach,
us.
you brought up NIL, so we'll open up the Pandora's box. Do players openly ask you in the recruiting process about NIL? Is women's college golf, it is kind of a set deal, or are you negotiating, if you will, with players on how much you can get them to try to come to your university?
I have a lot of international girls, so they have different issues with their visas and being able to make money. My one American here, it does have an NIL deal, and I think the Americans are more aware of it, and their parents. I can't honestly say that there's a ton, at least on the women's golf side, from what I've heard. We have little deals here and there of 5,000, 10,000. I think there's rumors of some girls at some schools. I don't think it's going to get out of control. When we start revenue sharing next year across the board, and with the 9 roster spots, a lot is changing. So I don't think we're going to see huge in women's golf. I know there's a few men's teams, the outliers of they're able to give their guys, car deals and things like that. But, a lot of us older coaches, as I coin myself now, we have to get used to it. It's not like, oh, wow, this is crazy. It's good for the kids. I think it's our responsibility to manage it as coaches and as administrators, and, fiscally be responsible for that. And I saw while I was at a luncheon today that UNLV is at the quarterback is sitting out this week because his deal didn't get paid. So, to hear these kids that are 18, 19, 20 years old dealing with contracts that are exorbitant, right? And our quarterback of our football team has 3 cars and he gets paid hundreds of thousands. So that's a lot on an 18, 19-year-old. And also the expectation there. I mean, I think that there's a lot of pressure when you take, I always say, too much is given, much is expected, right? So these athletes at these schools are being paid a lot of money, but they better perform. So it's an interesting time. We haven't really seen it in women's college golf. I don't think so much, but Who knows?
Well, Roger, that quarterback that's coming into UCF this week is the highest NIL in the country, reportedly at over $4 million a year for a college player. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, things are.
His attorney negotiated quite well.
The toothpaste is not going back in the tube anytime soon,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, and I honestly, I think maybe for women's golf, I think some of these young ladies can get paid more in college than they can playing a Cactus
Great
Tour or an
point.
Epson Tour. I mean, honestly, like
Yeah.
we pay for all their equipment, we pay for everything. Plus now I'm giving one of our players cash that, you know, she doesn't have to make a cut for that. So maybe it'll help college golf, both men and
Great
women, in the
point.
sense that if you can give a guy $100,000 NIL, maybe he'll stay and not turn pro. So we'll see.
Well, Coach, we always ask or would like to understand from the parents' perspective and the student athletes who are in this process of getting recruited. UCF, you've obviously had success. You're a top program. Could you give some insight on call it 3 or 4 things that you're looking for in that next level athlete that's coming to UCF that you're going to be paying for?
Well, like I said, we're looking for the best players in the world, and that's part of my job. I have a lot of international girls on the team, but we only have 1 or 2 a year. As I said, we're the smallest team on campus, any campus, a college golf team, and we have to be pretty selective. You know, we have 1 or 2, and of course, yes, we want the best players in the world. So I travel a lot over to Europe and look for power players, but they have to obviously be decent students. Every school is a different level of academics. I say they have to be a decent student and really have a desire to want to play at a high level and be surrounded by other women that want to play at a high level. And I think that, I kind of check off, okay, you have the golf talent, and then we're looking at, okay, what other qualities are you bringing to the table? Being a good teammate, being somebody who's easy to get along with, being somebody who's a little low maintenance. You have to have be very driven, but you have to be low maintenance to be a good teammate, right? So it's kind of that balance of, I want you to work really hard and have high goals, but I want you to be low maintenance and easy to get along with. And that's sometimes hard to find, but we're lucky here that we can be selective with that. And it's not an easy job, but it's a fun job.
Well, the message board is lighting up. As you might imagine, you're in the hotbed of junior golf in the state of Florida. Certainly, you are American at an American school, yet you are mostly international. So I'll put you on the spot. What sent you in that direction where you made the conscious decision that you felt you were better off for your school and your win-loss record to go the international way as opposed to homegrown talent there in Florida or the Southeast U.S.?
Well, I've never been asked that question before. Well, I think that it's fair to say if you look at women's golf in general, it's very international. We look at the LPGA Tour, it's the same. I'm hopeful that the start of the U.S. national team can help our homegrown here in the U.S. develop. I think that's someplace where we have to get better. I can tell you from going over to Europe for years, the talent level is just better. And that's hard to describe, but the girls are more mature. They're more independent. I had a French girl who just graduated and a French girl this year who's a freshman who, for example, they go to academy on their own when they're in 9th grade, golf academies, they study there, but they move away from home when they're in 9th and 10th grade. And one of my girls said, "Oh, my parents never come to tournaments." She's on the national team in Belgium. She's like, "Yeah, I think my dad and mom have seen me play like 1 time." So I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but it's just different in the sense of maturity. I will say from talking to all of them, their national camps, they're very serious and they have high expectations for them. And I think that we can develop that in the U.S. I mean, we're such a large country. I think we have to break it down state by state. I'd love to see a Florida State team, a Georgia State team, where maybe you do have a coach that's able to go in and coach the top 10 girls and 10 boys in the state and develop them. I mean, that's really what other countries are doing, and they pay for them. Actually, one of my freshmen right now, she was trying to fly back with the hurricane tonight from Tunisia. She missed all this past week because she plays on the Dubai national team, and the federation flew her to Tunisia this week, paid for everything, and she's competing in a major WAGR event, the in Tunisia for the whole week. So, and they're paying for all of it. And we just didn't get that. I mean, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I didn't grow up with, my parents had to pay for everything. So I think a lot of these other countries are supporting these kids at a young age. They're paying for everything, their clubs, their development. And we need something that like that in the US to, kind of get that gap a little bit smaller.
Yeah. Do you think, I think you actually touched on a great point of like the international players being developed versus, I think here in the US, we tend to have a lot of players who are at country clubs. They get a lot of golf lessons. They do well. They promote themselves really well. Is that one of those things that where the parents are just too attached to their son or daughter in the US, whereas internationally, to your point, I run an academy. I have kids from all over the world, and they're so different in their approach to handling their own business, if you will.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just at a hurricane tour this past weekend recruiting a girl from Russia. She was here over at OCN, and I was just watching the range, and I just saw so many parents like pushing the cart up to the range, and so many parents, babying their kids a little bit. And like I said, these girls are coming to me saying, "Oh, my parents didn't even come to tournaments." And it sounds harsh, but I just know from dealing with these kids for the past 20 plus years that it's just a little bit more hardcore. And it's weird to say that, but it's just, I work camps here, and I have a lot of junior camps, and I've done them, and we want the kids to have fun, and that's a great thing. Like, you want to have fun and chip into the hula hoop, but I think in some of these countries, my Thai girls will say, well, at Thai national camp, there's no cell phones. We get up at 7 in the morning, we go to 8 at night, we get a little 30-minute break for lunch, and it's 10, 12 hours a day for 2 weeks of golf. And it's just different levels. And I'm not saying that that's the recipe to it, but there's a sense of grit. You have to have that grit a little bit, and you've got to have your kids suffer a little bit. And I'm not saying by any, just that little bit of discomfort. I think a lot in the US, we don't want our kids to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable, and they have to kind of get used to that. And that may be the difference. And you have to be that balance, right, of a supportive, loving parent, but also, hey, my dad, I was fortunate. My dad played college basketball, and I was a basketball player in high school, and I was too slow and short to play in college. But I'd come home, I scored 25 points in my first game, and my dad said, well, you got to work on your free throws. And I was like, dude, I just scored 25 points. But I was so fortunate to have a dad. He loved me and my parents, but they always pushed me. I knew they were proud of me, but it was always like, yeah, you can do a little bit better. And, I'm best friends with my parents now, but growing up, I was not friends with my parents. They were not, they were my parents, and they were the most important person in the family. And I say that a lot. I said, hey, my parents were the most important person in the family, not me. So, and I think we've seen a little bit of a reversal of that in recent years.
First of all, Pittsburgh myself, born and raised, so love
nice.
The black and gold, 3-0 start. Let's talk about the reality is this. Without a national team, let's just say you're at the highest level playing AJGA as a 14, 15-year-old. Mm-hmm. You can't rent a car. You can't get a hotel room. You could pre-put on a plane, but you have to have a thing around your neck, and essentially you have to have someone on both sides. I mean, these are facts to travel in the United States for a 15, 16 and under, 17 and under kid. So as the parents are rolling their eyes saying, oh, woe are we, we're, another podcast here on the Hub of Junior Golf where it's the American parents are the problem. I do, as a parent of a golfer, everything that they have in Europe and these other countries, it really doesn't exist. Even if a parent, if you're trying to follow your blueprint of, okay, I'm going to try to make them more independent. They're going to go play the AJGA in Idaho, and they're going to get on a plane by themselves and Uber to the hotel. And when the hotel, they're going to sleep in the locker room of the golf course because they can't get up. It's not realistic. So maybe the national team will bring our players some of that independence.
Yeah, or like I said, the state level, if you had a state coach that was able to take the top 5 boys. But I get your point. That doesn't include all of the masses. So maybe there are hurdles there. But yeah, I mean, I've always said too, like, hey, I'm an American too. And there's a lot of sacrifices. I'm so thankful my parents made a lot of sacrifices. You know, my mom was a a night shift nurse who'd come home at 7 in the morning and get in the car and take me to a tournament while my dad was at work. So there's a lot of sacrifices, as we all know, when you're an athlete, that your parents or grandparents or aunt and uncles have to chip in and help out. But you know, regardless, I get that question a lot of what are you looking for? And you know, no matter what level you're playing at, you know, it's just play your best. You know, if you're going to go to a hurricane tour, well, let's be real. I tell everybody this. There's a place for everybody. I mean, there's 265 Division I women's golf program. There is a place for everybody. But so many kids and parents get caught up in these are the schools we're going to. We're going to go to the top 25. And I will tell you, that is a really, really hard group to get into, right? Is that top 25 men or women? And then you go even top 50 and you go top 75. But there are a lot of really good programs from like 100 to 200 that, you know, maybe you need to narrow that down sooner. And I always get, well, I'll play better next year. Next summer is his or her summer to really, they're going to come on strong. And I'll just tell you, if you're calling a coach or emailing a coach or texting a coach and they're not getting back to you, you need to move on. It's like that guy or girl, like they're not interested in you, move on to somebody else. And if it's your dream school, you know, you might just have to say, hey, I need to spend my time looking at these 10 schools that are actually giving me attention. They've got scholarship opportunity. But I see a lot of kids waste time on a school that might not be at your level. And my philosophy, by the way, with that is go someplace where you can play. Playing is the most important thing in college golf. Go where you can play. And I've probably been criticized. I've let a few players go, but if you talk to those players, they'd say, I'm so thankful that Coach Marron helped me go someplace else where I could play. I mean, I've let go of 2-3 girls recently in the past few years. One went to UNC Wilmington. She's their star player. I said, she wasn't playing here. She wasn't making our lineup. And I said, Victoria, I just don't want to see you sit the bench again next year. Go someplace where you can get in the van and go to a golf tournament. And I think that's an important question to ask. How many players are on your team? Now we can have 9 on our team, which I think is better on the men's side, because if you have 10, 12 guys, we're only traveling with 5. Yep. Even on the women's side, we're only traveling with 5. And if you sit at home, you're not getting better at home. You're just not. You are going to get better if you go to a school where you can go to tournaments and work on your game. If you're sitting at home while the coach and the girls, the guys get in the van and go, that's tough. Maybe as a freshman, you can learn a little bit if you're a really hard worker, but maybe go someplace where you're like, I think I could make that lineup as 5 my freshman year. And then by my sophomore year, I could be 2. Maybe by my senior year, I could be the number 1 player. But if you go someplace just to be on the team, that's not a great experience.
Yeah, I've got the bag though, but I'm so proud, right? I've got the bag.
Well, and that's, yeah, right. That's some, maybe your dream school is, let's say your dream school is UCF. You're like, hey, I just want to be on the team, or Florida State. If you're okay with just having a bag, that's okay. But if you're really somebody who's like, I want to go, the best part of college golf is tournaments. I mean, the best part is going to tournaments and being with your team and playing for your team. That's the best part. So I would encourage you to really understand their schedule, really understand their players. Do I have a realistic shot of making the lineup? And maybe ask the coach that, hey, would you think I could make the lineup? And, you know, he or she should be able to say, yeah, I would predict you'll be in the lineup your freshman year, or, hey, maybe by your sophomore year, but go someplace where you can play.
No bumper stickers.
No, right.
Coach, that is, Roger, you have one more?
Well, I was just going to ask the rankings versus winning question, you know. So, Coach, we always like to ask, you know, if you've got 2 players, a player who's ranked fairly high, but really hasn't won any events, but has played the right events to get there, but a player who's playing, let's call it, you know, whatever, you know, tour out there, wins multiple times, wins locally, wins in the state. Which one are you looking at? Which one piques your curiosity most?
For us, I mean, I have to say, what we're looking at is Wagger rankings, and I know that sounds severe too, but you know, all of my girls are basically in the top 400, 500 Wagger. I mean, I get somewhere around there. I mean, that's initially what we're looking for. You know, world amateur golf rankings, and some kids don't know what that is, and that's not every school, but I would say your top Division I men's and women's teams are going to look at Wagger events. So if you can get in a few of those, but yeah, I mean, rankings, your AJGA class ranking. Yeah, but winning is important. If you go and you, like I always say, if you're going to go to a tournament and you can say, hey, I've won a lot of events. I think you have to be a little bit picky and choosy about that. I think that you do have to play in the right events. Don't waste your money or time going to an event where a coach is just going to kind of cross that off the list. You've got to have a list of kind of A events, B events, C events, and say, hey, this is an A level and we can afford to go to this many, and this is a B event. But I think a coach is probably expecting if you're at a B or C event, you better be winning. And if you go to the AJGA event, you're like, yeah, I finished top 10, fair enough. But, there's kind of little signs to it, but play the best you can, no matter what you're playing in.
Great answer.
Well, Coach, really wonderful advice. We thank you so much for the time. We wish you the best of luck trying to get some tickets to the game this week against Colorado. I kid, but really appreciate your insight, and thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Go nice.
All right.
Bye, Coach.
Good night.
Well, Raj, I don't think we could have planned this any better the week of the President's Cup. I mean, that really had an international flavor, and I can already hear the message boards lighting up. Well, if the U.S. is so bad and the parents are so bad, how come the United States dominate golf in the Olympics and in the President's Cup and to a large extent the Ryder Cup? And you look at the PGA Tour and LPGA Tour. Well, we are a gigantic country, and the top level, they don't need a national team. I mean, let's be honest. Scotty Scheffler, with or without a national team, was going to be the best player in the world. Tiger Woods, with or without a national team, is going to be the best player in the world. Nelly Korda, going to be the best player in the world. So there certainly are extenuating circumstances. But when you look at UCF's roster, almost entirely international. Coach she didn't pull any punches there. I mean, she likes that independence and feels like those players, if nothing else, aren't running into homesickness and how to pack their bag before a tournament and all that kind of jazz.
Well, I mean, I definitely took heed to that conversation, or that moment in the conversation about her watching the kids on the range, where their parents are, the international kids. Nobody's on the range with them. They're just out there doing their thing, focusing. Where parents are pushing their carts and putting balls down, and those are the things that coaches are looking for. I mean, are you independent enough to do what you need to do to succeed? And I think
the advice, because I think I made a pretty good point. Our parents do have to travel with their junior golfers. It's just the landscape that is required when you're traveling, but they can pull up to the bag drop and say, good luck.
Yeah.
I'm going to work today from the clubhouse with my laptop. Good luck. I'll follow along on the scores.
Well, or to her point, I mean, listen, there are places like Golf Performance Academy that, can go and get the national, program kind of experience. There's IMG and there's others, right? But, GPA is a great experience for these kids. And we're getting, international kids that want to come here because they want to play in the U.S. And it's actually refreshing, that we have, little interference by the parents of saying, well, we need to do this tournament because this parent told us this, versus, hey, we're here to work. Just tell us what we need to do. We're here to go to work. And as we heard last week on the podcast, coaches' jobs are at stake if they're not winning. And so they've got a job to do. Period. I mean, these athletes now are getting paid. You're running an organization just like a sports team organization.
Yep.
Jerry Jones, if you will, right?
Yep. There's no participation trophies for coaches, man. It's win-loss.
Yeah. No doubt about
it. Let's finish up with this. I think this is a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the Performance Center, just because I do think it is so apropos for how this podcast turned out.
Yeah, I mean, the Golf Performance Center Academy is a boarding school for those athletes aspiring to play at the next level. As she described, it is a full out, you wake up at 6 a.m., go work out, you get your focused workout for you individually. School academics are top notch, where these kids are getting, great academic, studies and going on to some of the best schools. So, from a, clinical psychologist on staff that's helping them develop their mental games, as we hear a lot, from parents that, oh, they choked or this. Well, there's a process to learning all of those things. And for us, Dr. Brandt does a great job of guiding these young people and learning, the mental skills, and then, having all the right equipment and having the right, golf coaches around to kind of lead them through their organized, and, purposeful practice programs, right? That really helps them reach their ultimate goals, which is playing at the next level, college or professionally.
No doubt. JuniorGolfHub.com, your home for all things junior golf. That is going to do it for us. Thanks to Coach. Very insightful, as always, here on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. Of course, for our director and producer, Michael Nick, for Roger Nick, I am Ryan Burr saying until next week, so long from the Hub of Junior Golf podcast.